Hello! In this video, we're going to look at the workflow for deploying code changes in the context of a Drupal site on Pantheon. Every site on Pantheon gets at least 3 environments. There's the all-important live environment where you would connect up your real deal domain name. Content editors would sign into the live environment, add content, upload JPEGs and whatnot to a Drupal site or a WordPress site, perhaps. On the other side, you have a dev environment. This is where you could try out a new module. You could edit CSS directly in the dev environment. Of course, you can do that locally too. In this video, we'll look at doing such changes directly in the dev environment. Then, when your code changes are ready to go, you deploy them first to the test environment. There you are simulating, dare I say, testing the deployment that you would then make to the live environment. So in this video, we are going to see all 3 of those steps. In this video, we're going to move code changes up to a live environment. Because I want you to be able to follow along if you so choose, we are going to do this in the context of a brand new Drupal site that we'll make in a free sandbox. I'll speed through that process because that's not so much what I want to highlight there, but I do want to show you I have no tricks up my demo sleeves here. We'll just make a brand new free site. We'll install Drupal's Umami example distribution in that dev environment of the new Pantheon site. We'll export the configuration files that install with any Drupal site, commit those to Git. We'll then create the test and live environments in our free site on Pantheon. Once we have all 3 environments, we're then going to simulate the workflow we were just looking at. We'll make a content change in the live environment, a small example change, simulating what content editors would be doing on a regular basis with a real deal live site. We'll then make a code change in the dev environment. Again, we'll make it a small tweak for example purposes. We'll export the configuration change that we'll be making using the CLI. That's also something that warrants its own separate video. We'll commit our code change to Git. We'll deploy our code change to the test environment. Then the database will come down from the live environment as we deploy to the test environment as code changes then move up from dev to test. And then finally, to close things out, we'll deploy our code change all the way to the live environment. So it may sound like a lot here, but this is just the heartbeat of a regular development team's workflow as they move code changes up from a local environment or a dev environment to a test environment, do some final checking before deploying code out to a live environment. So I'm now going to jump over to my Pantheon dashboard, and I'm going to click Create New Site. Again, I'll use the magic of video editing to speed through some of these steps. We've got separate videos walking through site creation in greater detail, but I'm quickly just going to spin up a new, I'll call it workflow demo for Drupal. As I click continue here, containers are going to spin up, database, other necessary web infrastructure for the running of a Drupal site. We'll speed this up here. Great. Now we have all the infrastructure for our dev environment in our Pantheon site. I won't walk through our whole dashboard here in detail. I'll just call out that, again, for every site on Pantheon, we have a dev, test, and live environment. So far, dev is the only environment that's been created. We'll not just yet initialize the test environment. First, I'd like to install Drupal itself now in the dev environment. So I'll click Visit Development Site, and I get the familiar Drupal installation screen. And again, I'm going to install the Umami demonstration profile here. So here I am signed into a new instance of the Umami Food Magazine demo distribution of Drupal core, and I see the familiar articles and recipes that come with this fictional food magazine. Again, I'm in the development environment, which means I can do some development tasks if I want to. Now, a starting point development task for many professional Drupal teams is exporting configuration from the Drupal database to the file system so that it can be version controlled. That's not a hard requirement for Drupal sites, but it is a best practice for many Drupal teams. So to do that, I'm going to flip over this site from Git mode to SFTP mode. Doing this change will make the version controlled file system writable both through SFTP and also through command line tools like Drush, as we will see in a moment. Now that I've flipped the development mode, I'm going to jump over to my command line, and I'm going to run Terminus, which is the name of the Pantheon command line interface, and I want to run a Drush command, and the name of the site that I want to run that Drush command on is, again, workflow demo for Drupal, and I'm running this in the dev environment. Now, the command that I want to pass to Drush is config export, and because I'm confident in this command, I'll just add on the -y flag, meaning, yes, I really do want to export my configuration. All right, now that the configuration has been successfully exported to the config directory, I can jump back over to the dashboard here, and I see there are a whole bunch of YAML files that have been written out to the file system, more than I'm going to look at right now. Again, this is just what comes with the Umami distribution, and I'll commit these now to the Git repository. Now that I have those files committed to Git, I'm going to take the next steps that I want to show, the creation of the test and live environments. I'll click this button to initialize the test environment. Now the test environment is initialized, and I see the same Umami site here in the test subdomain. So I'll go ahead now and make the live environment. All right, and now I have my live environment. The same Umami content now in the live subdomain. And now the demo can really begin. So far, we've just been doing setup. We've created a new Drupal site in a free Pantheon sandbox. We've installed Umami in the dev environment, exported configuration, created the test and live environments. Now let's do the fun part. Let's change content in live and then change code in the dev environment. So, signed into the live environment here, let me make a simple but obvious change. I'm going to add a whole bunch of exclamation points to the title of this recipe because I am so darn excited about deep Mediterranean quiche. Now, in a real world site, there'd be far more extensive, perhaps realistic changes to this type of content. You'd be making new articles, making new recipes. Here, I'm just adding a bunch of exclamation points, and I will see those exclamation points both on the individual page, but also on this view, which is showing me 4 recipes. So I've changed the content. I now want to make a code or configuration change that will show me how the Pantheon workflow works. Here I have 4 recipes showing up on the homepage of Umami. What if the Umami Food Magazine team has a discussion and decides, oh, our recipes are so good, we should actually show 6 recipes on the homepage. Now, that is a code or configuration change that we should not make directly in the live environment. That is a change that should come in the dev environment. So I'm going to go back to the Pantheon dashboard. I'm not going to work in the live environment. I'm now going to work in the development or dev environment. I'll look at this same section. I'll note here I don't have all the exclamation points on quiche because, again, I have not copied down the database from the live environment containing the change that I just made to this piece of content. I'm not changing the content in the dev environment. I am going to change code or configuration. The Drupal community is passionate about configuration management. So even for settings changes like this, I'm changing this homepage view to show 6 items instead of 4. There we go. We now have 6 items. We're seeing our quiche, and gluten-free pizza is now on the homepage too. Okay, so this is a configuration change, and in Drupal, it is normal to export configuration changes to code so that that configuration can be imported in future environments like the test and live environments that we'll see in a minute. Now, you can do that kind of config importing and exporting through a browser-based interface. In Drupal core, we can just see the fact that I have changed this bit of configuration from the 4 items that it exists in version control to the 6 items that are now in the active configuration. This is a change that I want to commit to Git. So I'm again going to go back to my handy dandy command line tool, which again warrants its own full video of explanation of the command line power of Pantheon. But the basic idea here is we're using the Pantheon command line tool to pass through a drush command that again exports all of our configuration. We previously exported all the configuration. Here, we're just exporting our one change. Next up, we are going to deploy our code change to the test environment, which will also involve pulling down the content changes, like the database change we just made in the live environment, and then pushing up the code change from the dev environment. So to summarize where we're at, our dev environment presently has a code change that puts 6, not 4, recipes on the home page. Our live environment has a content change that adds a whole bunch of exclamation points to this one particular recipe because we're so excited about. And our test environment doesn't have either of those things. It doesn't have the content change, nor does it have the code change that alters the number of recipes shown on the homepage. So right now, conceptually, this middle test environment is sort of doubly behind. When we do our deployment here, we will be pulling down the files and database from the live environment. That'll bring down that exclamation point change, and the code change that's coming up from dev will bring up our change to configuration. All right, our deployment to the test environment is now complete. We are seeing the content change that came down from the live environment. However, we're still only seeing 4 recipes, not the 6 that should be coming about from our code change. That's because in Drupal, there is still an extra step to import the configuration change that we just made. Now let me jump back over to my command line. We just did a configuration export in the dev environment. Now we want to do a configuration import in the test environment. And again, I'll just throw on the -y. Hooray! And if I refresh over in the browser here, I now see the 6 recipes that I wanted to see. Hooray! Let me check back on my agenda here. We've now deployed a code change to the test environment. And now let's finish it off with a code change to the live environment. Now that the deployment has been done to live, let me do that same configuration import in the live environment. And hooray, there on the live environment, we have 6 recipes. Our code change has been deployed. Now, you might be asking yourself, do I need to manually do a configuration import with each deployment? No, you don't. A subject for another video is Pantheon's hook system that we often call Quicksilver that can automatically perform actions after any given deployment, after code synchronization events like that, to do things like configuration imports, to do things like notifications to Slack channels. I'm getting ahead of myself. In this video, I just wanted to show you the basic intersection of code moving up from a dev environment, or perhaps a multi-dev or a local development environment, onto the test environment and onto the live environment, where content editors are continually making changes to content. If you like what you've seen here, again, you can do all of this with a free sandbox site, as I did here. This is not a paid plan, and still I have a dev, test, and a live environment. Try it out on your own. Thanks for watching.